The Restart Life says, Paul, I was literally about to say, I can see the hate video now. Man weighs in on women's roles. Even though I'm going to be trimming this down as I usually do, so I might be safe because Morgan will be with me during that time.
Whoa, looks like someone caught your little download of your stream. You cut out the part where you started talking about it without your wife as your shield. He literally admitted to trying to hide it. Someone gave me some dirt on Paul and Morgan. There's an uncut video that someone on Reddit did where Paul and Morgan told women they shouldn't be leaders. See, I have a Google Drive of it. We've got the dirt. This is an hour and 20 minutes. How am I supposed to... Let me see if maybe I could just skip through it and find it.
Because there are women out there who can teach incredibly. There are women out there who can speak publicly.
I can't wait for the... But
I think
there we go.
Like a good example of someone who runs a ministry is like Lisa Turkers. Like her
but I need you to. What do they believe though? This is building up to a precursor.
No different gender roles, and this is. I would say that this kind of the two sides here could be taken.
They just sucked a couple penises. Let me slow it down for you guys. Sorry. The hands have grasped. They are being moved towards each other in front of the man's face, and he takes the left one and he sort of grasps on
here
and releases, but into each other. And now he's got two big balls in his hands. Now he's got a big fat butt.
And so you have some egalitarian churches that are saying, oh, it's equal, no different roles. Women can be pastors, men can be pastors, women can teach men, men can teach women. So you would say, based off of just these definitions and stuff, you would be, and I would be as well, complementarian. Because the egalitarians that are...
Yes!
Because the egalitarians...
Okay, so I am an egalitarian. I do believe that either gender can be the leader, or like, you know, a woman can be the breadwinner for the family. I think that's totally fine. I don't know why it would be like wrong. I guess some people think that there should be defined roles, which doesn't really make much sense to me. It's another one of those things where it's like, why are you trying to control how someone's relationship works? This is something that would be completely not a part of you.
In the chat right now, and that are watching the playback, would say, what? You just said that women can't teach men? How dare you?
Right, you stupid idiots. Well, of course we didn't mean that. You can teach us, you just can't be the teacher. Obviously the teacher can learn from the student, but the student is the dad. I mean, the father, the husband. No, the student's the woman. The teacher is the husband. And he's allowed to learn from the student, but at the end of the day, who's the one with the degree?
It just depends as far as women going out and leading ministries, men working at home. It depends. Is the woman called to this? So many women, and I've heard this a number of times, women saying, well, I'm called. God is calling me to do this. God's calling me to go out and lead these types of...
Well, that would actually be the devil in her ear. What you're thinking is that God might be telling these women that it's time for them to lead. It's time for them to be in a leading position. But at the end of the day, that's the devil actually sneaking into your ear, and you should do everything you can to avoid that. You should actually take some men and put them in a position, regardless of whether or not God called them to it, because at least it's not the devil.
Okay, maybe he has called you to that. But if you're a wife, he called you to be a wife first. If you're a mother...
Wait, why though? Okay, so this is the logic. If you felt that from God, then maybe you're right. But God called you to be a wife first. But what if he didn't? Because if God spoke to them, you agree that he spoke to them. Then don't you think that they should listen to God and they shouldn't go to you and say, hey, what's the caveat here? Maybe she can be a wife. But that doesn't mean that he just called her to be a leader directly. Don't you think that would be the first thing? You shouldn't put words in God's mouth. If you agree with the logic, here's the logic. I just want to die. I just want to die. Who can relate? Ooh. Paul's like, ooh. It's like in the Prince EA videos where he's like,
still fulfilling those first two very important callings of being a wife and then a mother. And then everything else falls in line.
See, this is what she's saying. She's saying if God called you to be a pastor, you got to remember that first God called you to be a mother and a wife. And then if you do that, everything else will fall in line. AKA, you're not going to have time to be a pastor and you're going to do your little job. Morgan agrees that God called on this woman to be a pastor. She's saying, yes, he did. But don't do that. You got to be a wife and mother first. And then everything else will fall into line. This video is not me trying to call out Christians. As I always say, it's about very specific people within that community. And this is a message that I think works whether or not you're a Christian. Because right now, me sitting in the seat of a Christian would say these exact things. If God calls on you to do something, you listen to God. You don't go listen to some YouTuber. That's not me trying to make fun of the religion. That's me trying to make fun of someone who is directly contradicting themselves because they want to fulfill their agenda more than to worship God.
But if you can't do that other calling without like leaving your kids all the time, without missing out on dinners with your husband, without...
Well, because she has to cook the dinners, of course.
Being able to whatever... with your family, then that is not something that God is calling you to. I think
But she just said, yeah, maybe God did call you to do it. So you can't just say, well, if you can't do those other things, then he's not calling on you to do that. No, you're wrong. It's a bad argument.
Put way too much emphasis on like this idea that God is calling me to this. I'm really gifted in this area, so I must need to be doing this full time, all the time, always. It must be the most important thing in my life.
Yeah, if God called on you to do that thing and you feel like that's the thing you need to do with your life because you have a gift, then yes, you should do that. Why would you just not listen to him because Morgan told you have to be a mother and a wife? This doesn't make any sense. I thought God was the last word.
My life.
Interesting.
He's like, that's a bad argument, but I can't disagree with you on a live feed.
I still think I stand by that there can be exceptions. Obviously, You see Paul saying, like, if you don't get married, that gives you an even better opportunity to devote yourself to the serving and ministry of the Lord. I mean, just one obvious thing is if you're feeling so like this fire in my belly that the Lord has placed such a heavy call on me to do these ministries, consider not getting married. I'm not saying that.
But why can't you be married? Doesn't God call on you to also, come together with somebody in marriage who you love and you can also promote and spread the word of the gospel with that person that you have devoted the rest of your life to? Why do you guys get to come up with the rules?
That if you get married, you can't maybe together as a unit go out, or even just the woman, like go out and do a ministry. But I do think make sure that the ministry of your husband, of your kids, is taken care of. But
don't you say that to a husband also? That he has this responsibility to be the protector of his family? And if he calls to be a pastor, then he should make sure that he can handle those responsibilities first. If he can't protect his family, then he shouldn't even get married. They've never ever said that. If someone calls on to be a pastor and it's a man, they'd say, hell yeah, brother. I mean, ooh, heck yeah, brother. Son of a gun. It's so very obvious what's going on here. And it sucks that people like Morgan are just directly sucked into that agenda because it was made by men.
What would you say to the Proverbs 31 woman? Let's push back on what we're talking about a little bit, because the Proverbs 31 woman, which is we look at that as just this amazing example of a godly wife. Mm-hmm. She's working to some extent. What do you make of that? Can we read that real quick? Do you have it?
Proverbs 31 reveals she is enterprising and ambitious. The Proverbs 31 wife is a
girl boss.
Small business owner. She makes and sells garments. She makes her own business decisions independently, and she alone decides what to do with her earnings. Notice, however, her earnings do not go towards shoes or bags, but to buy a field where she can plant a vineyard, something that will benefit the whole family.
Just so you know, though, that while this woman is working, she's doing it she's spending it on her family and not on a bunch of jewelry. You don't say, well, just so you know, the man's not spending his money on man caves and football jerseys. It's just interesting because this is a very in-your-face version of misogyny that you don't see very often. Like, it's so obviously wrong that they lay out why they're wrong. I am in him bumper stickers. I am in him. Jesus is always faithful. Save the babies. If Jesus had a gun, he'd still be alive today. Jesus did age like a normal person. He was physically a human, so no, he definitely would have just died later. But also, like, he wanted to sacrifice himself for everybody. Okay.
I think that that's interesting because I'm all for women running a business or like starting up a side job that is going to benefit her family in the long run. I think that that's...
Why is it all about benefiting the family? Why can't people do stuff for fun anymore?
It's not like I'm just all of a sudden going to quit my vlog channel or quit my Instagram. Like, I have to remember that that's my side thing. My most important thing is pouring into my husband.
Paul's got his like hand on the back of her neck. He's like, what's the most important thing, Morgan? It's not the vlog channel, is it? It's working for me.
Yeah, like, we're not down on women running businesses because, like this says, Proverbs 31, she was crushing it. But I think
they didn't even read Proverbs 31. That was literally an article about it. Let me get in there. The sayings of King Lemuel, in inspired utterance his mother taught him. Listen, my son. I don't want to read this anymore. Worth far more than rubies. Her arms are strong. She provides food for her family in portions for her female servants. So she has servants. Sounds like women can be in positions of power. That's what this is telling me. So why is Morgan saying they can't?
Adam was formed first, then Eve. Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived first, type thing. So there's like more precedence for this general rule, which is wives, make sure that you're taking care of the home, husbands being out there working. Also, it says in...
Oh, God. So there's this general rule. He literally was like, Eve was made from Adam's rib, and Eve was the one that got deceived first. She was deceived, and Adam was first, which means men win and women don't.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 20, but for Adam, no suitable helper was found, so the Lord caused man to fall into a deep sleep, and he provided this helper, Eve. That's kind of the first example we're seeing of Eve being a helper and not necessarily, even though obviously like...
But it's such a weird belief to have because the Adam and Eve story didn't even happen. Even if you're a Christian, you have to understand that the story of Adam and Eve as told in the Bible is a story that is supposed to be taught to people. Even if it came from God, the story may have come from God, but it still is supposed to be an allegory.
I'm serving Morgan. I'm loving Morgan as Christ loved the church. That's my goal. Huge responsibility.
So is she helping you or are you helping her? Because you just said you're serving her, but then you said that her job is to serve you.
A lot of the major thing. I give you permission.
Oh, she turned into a dog.
Here at this point in my adult life, whenever I hear God called me to blank, God told me to blank, I'm cautious about that. So if a woman's saying God called me to be a pastor, I would say, how do you know he called you?
But you wouldn't say that if she said God called me. What's a thing that she could do? God told me to hit a fat nene. Yeah. Listen, he wouldn't say the same thing if she asked him about God calling her to not be in a power position. It's such a weird thing to say. Like all of a sudden you get serious and you're like, how do you know? I'm sure that Paul says the same stuff about a bunch of crap.
How do you know he called you to that? And how is that backed by his word? If God's calling a woman to be a pastor, I'm going to be questioning that because I don't see that unless she's saying maybe a pastor, a women's pastor, a children's pastor. If you're saying like the pastor over the whole church, pastoring a church, I'm very concerned.
That's not God. This is just so confusing to me because in the same breath, she says, yes, I believe that God called you to do that, but you got to make sure you're a wife and you're a mother first. But then he turns around and says, if you tell me God called on you to do that, I'm not going to be so sure that he did. And it's like, shouldn't you be preaching that God's word, if he calls you to do something and says that this is your calling and this is the thing that's going to help you spread his word? And why instead would you listen to this bozo? I think Christians would also be disagreeing with this behavior.
Morgan, you
are a bad girl.
Bye! I'm going to a human trafficking 101 class.
She learning how to do it? The hell? No, don't go there.
Thoughts on female worship leaders, Kat asks.
Dude, like why can't there be a female worship leader? Doesn't even say it in the Bible. We literally just went over Proverbs 31. Even if it leaves open spots for contradiction, they still will stick to the word, but only in their interpretation of it. Like they're only believing so hard in the word that they've interpreted themselves. They twist it in such a way that it's so bizarre. And he literally just said maybe God is calling you to be a woman's pastor or maybe a children's pastor, but I wouldn't be so sure if it's a real pastor. But then he goes and he's like, well, I don't know about a worship leader. Huh?
My initial, like right off the bat, without thinking deeply on it, without trying to see, does scripture say anything about female worship leaders? I'm fine with that.
Thank God. Oh, thank you, Paul. Your initial reaction definitely made me think that would be your belief. And I'm really proud of you for letting us have that.
I'm willing to hear y'all's thoughts, dude. I right now at this point am more ears than I am giving my advice.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely getting that from you, Paul. That's like me going right now, guys, I'm only on here. I'm all ears. Like, tell me how you're doing. No, I'm not all ears. It's my stream. I'm the only one who can talk. I lead this stream.
The Archon says, can't question God called me. That, and I know you're joking, the Archon, that's dangerous. And one of my issues with being in the hypercharismatic movement was they really do, at least from my experience, hopefully not all, but it seemed to be a theme of if somebody's anointed, if it's clear that the anointing is on somebody, you kind of give them a pass in some respects because God's doing something so big with them. God's clearly, his anointing is so heavily on them that it's like if you were to question or call out or criticize, that's touching the Lord's anointed. I have come to realize I'm not a fan of that.
Okay, but you're not a fan of it, but who are you to tell someone that they have not been called on by God to do something? Is that not so bizarre that you feel like you are in the position to tell someone whether or not God actually anointed you?
The Restart Life says, Archon, exactly. The Archon says, yes, Paul, the God called me thing seems like an easy way to justify anything.
But that's not anything. Is really the worst of the worst for you a woman trying to be a pastor? They can get away with anything. They'll get away with it all.
If someone's using that for like a really big, maybe life decision, look at their track record, ask them and say, okay, man, God may have spoken that to you. He may have been calling you to that.
Also, like, is he the boss, like, admitting these people into heaven? Like, why is he like, all right, we might allow that, but we have to take a look at your track record? It's like, for what? Is it a background check for a job? Like, what is God? How many times does someone like, God called on me to like burn down a building? God called on me to smear shit in your face, do an ollie down the highway on a skateboard with a rocket attached to my back. Almost always, if God calls on you to do something, it's a positive thing, including trying to be in a leadership position and teach more people about God and spread the gospel.
Squishy, what do you think about that? Like, literally, there's
God, he's talking to the pillow on the couch and calling it squishy. Yeah, someone is right in the chat. It does say actually people use God calling on them as excuses for them to be bad people very often, LOL. But I'm talking about in the point of view of Paul and Morgan. Those things would not be considered to be bad.
Is it okay that I'm now here alone discussing the topic at hand? I feel like having Morgan...
He literally just admitted that the only reason he feels comfortable telling women they can't be in power positions is because his wife was next to him.
Morgan here kind of like even things out to where it's not like, oh, a man is talking about issues that affect a woman. Well, that's just how it's going to be. Haters can get over it.
Oh my God. I can't believe he said that. That's crazy. I can't believe he actually said that.
Mary Elizabeth says, it's tough when it gets into worship leaders, especially like public worship leaders, because they almost become Christian leaders, even if they don't claim to be.
Yeah, but couldn't you say that about any type of leader? Not just like a pastor position, but also like a small group leader, perhaps the leader of like a club at school. Because I thought this position was just between man and woman, like husband and wife. Because if it transfers from the church, then it should also be transferring to things like schools. Should women be teachers? Should they be leading a classroom? Because technically, if you're a Christian and you're a teacher, you should be using that position to show holiness. Whether or not you're trying to turn those kids into Christians, you're still trying to act as God or as Jesus would act in front of these kids, you know? Isn't that also a position of power?
So Deborah, Phoebe, the woman at the well, Miriam, all exceptions to teaching over men, or do women just lose the authority to teach when they have a husband and children?
A good question.
I still would say that may be exceptions. I still kind of stand by that.
You're not standing by that, because you're saying that if they said that they were called on God to do that, you would question and you would like background check them for some reason.
Here's 1, 2, 3 examples. Are they all exceptions? I would say maybe. I still might think so, but you guys let me know what you think. The Restart Life says, Paul, I was literally about to say I can see the hate video now. Man weighs in on women's roles.
Here I am.
Even though I'm going to be trimming this down as I usually do to just like the 30 or 35, however long it was, middle segment. So I might be safe because Morgan will be with me during that time.
Whoa, looks like someone caught your little download of your stream. You cut out the part where you started talking about it without your wife as your shield. He literally admitted to trying to hide it.
I'm sure you won't get any hate for talking about this as a man. Woo!
He's like sweating now. Okay, so this was recorded like a few days ago maybe. So maybe they haven't done the edit of it yet. What's going on? What is he doing?
What a day.
What's he doing? Oh, did he just come? Well, that was weird.